Hey everybody, Fluff here. So today I'm bringing you a quick Draken guide, going over how I run Draken in solo, as well as how we run him in our speedrun settings. This will be done in the same vein of how I did the jungler guide, so there won't be any footage, but I have got footage on the channel of me playing Draken if you're curious to how that would look and how it performs within the run. To start with, let's head over to Breakers and talk about the relics, as well as why you wouldn't want to take particular relics in your run. So to start with, you're going to notice there's much similarities here as well to how I play Lightning, as well as to how we play pretty much any breaker in the game. Skill builds predominantly are the strongest in the game. Unfortunately, weapons just don't hold a candle to them. Following the generic ruling that I've previously stated in a breakdown of how damage works within the game, you'll notice that it's a common build pattern here as to how we generically build skill builds. So we start with our Mercy. We start with Mercy, because Mercy will double our base attack power, which for Draken is 200, so you'll start your run with 400. This is a lot of early damage to be gaining. And then you have Draken's major drawback is his cooldowns. This meaning he's going to lose a lot of DPS anytime he's not using skills. So we take Special Charge Module, mainly because most of his damage skills can hit multiple times on a single press. So his Sweeping Wind, for example, it dashes forward and hits on the way out and on where he lands. This means you have two opportunities to proc the 15% chance to reset, as well as if you get the skill upgrade in your run, which makes it hit multiple times where he lands as well. You'll have yourself resetting your cooldowns more often than you would think with this relic. Moving over to Convergent Energy Skill Module, 100% raw skill power. This could be off-putting to some people due to the 5% coins held on skill use getting consumed. This is not a big issue. Please start taking this relic. I've seen a lot of streams, I've seen a lot of YouTube clips of people being turned off by the fact that this consumes coins on skill use. This has an internal cooldown. Much like how Charge Module here says 15 seconds per skill, this will not consume your coins every single skill press. This has an internal cooldown of 3 to 5 seconds. What this means is, when you're really going to be doing your burst damage, and you're not just spamming your skills, you're going to shoot your Crasher, you're going to apply your Defense Shred with Hack and Slash, you're going to use your Sweeping Wind, and you're going to Blade Shock. This will only consume your coins once during that entire rotation. This will help a lot, and for the most part as well, you're going to be spending most of your coins as soon as possible buying relics, buying weapons. You do not want to be holding on to lots of coins. There's this issue where players seem to think to themselves that they need to haste themselves, hold on to a lot of their coins and then spend them all quickly on like the last shop and just gradually spend them for a run. That's not it at all. You want to be getting as much damage as possible, as fast as possible. If you see something that gives you a 20% attack power increase, buy it. Moving on to the fourth relic. This is kind of a flex slot, meaning it could be many different things. Personally, I run Critical Power Shield, as I run a lot of Campanella and Campanella Extreme. These tier 1 relics don't appear within Campanella and Campanella Extreme, so this is just 100% critical damage that otherwise I would not be able to find. We also, in multiplayer settings, run with Sandman for the most of the time as well, partnered with any breakers that we play, which means that we'll be able to get shields given to us via his power shield upgrades. So we'll have permanent uptime of this, but even then, this is still a very good relic to use even in solo runs, as I will state how you can get more shields and how you can make use of these relics to really increase your damage in your runs. Moving over to the priority list, you will notice that we follow that same rule in these relics as we do in the previous relics that you've seen. We want to be prioritizing lots of skill power, lots of crit damage. We want to be getting some global multipliers, so this will be things like Status Effect Target and Gold Tooth. You got attack power relics to really scale your early calculations. So, meaning this attack power will then get scaled up by your skill power, which will then get scaled up by like your crit damage and then your global multipliers. And then we've got more stuff like Restraint. Restraint can be a finicky thing to learn to use. So I would understand if you didn't want to use this whilst learning, but this is still 200% skill power. This weapon not in use for 3 seconds thing, in comparison to the Crasher. So what ends up happening is you'll fire your Crasher and the buff lasts for 5 seconds, and then you have Restraint, which lasts for 3 seconds. Thankfully, with the buff adapt stat, where it increases the duration of your buffs, Crasher will last a little longer, so you'll actually have around about a 2 to 3 second window where Restraint's active and you have the crit buff. This is a lot of skill power to be gaining, but isn't necessary. If you want to substitute something else out for this slot, I would suggest going down and finding something like more cooldown reduction to put there instead, or even something on the lines of, let's say, depending if you're doing G3 normal or G3 extreme. Now that these relics are available, I would even throw in the 25% cooldown reduction. But yeah, for the most part, you want to be finding things to reduce your cooldown, increase your skill power, increase your attack power, as well as these global multiplier relics, and avoid things. Now, this is going to be hard for people to understand or to take in and really stop doing, and it will be seen as heresy from all the Draken players. But you do not want to be running these relics that give you bonuses on counterattacking. When you're in a speedrun setting, you will be most of the time doing most of your burst damage in windows where the boss is in crowd control, meaning freeze or petrify. You will not have the opportunity to proc these relics. For this reason, you really want to avoid these, and this is also the same with charging greaves. Now, that being said, I'm going to contradict myself here. If you're playing solo and you're trying to get your first win, and you really want to try and get that 300 score in seasonal, this is not a lot of damage, but it's very consistent, and you can run these relics. So, if you're trying to push 300 for the first time, you could, well in doubt, run stuff like Charging Greaves, and just counterattack your way to victory. But your damage will not be that high. It will just be consistent. I hope that makes sense. I have a video where I break down how we skip phases in speedrunning to really make the most of our damage and the time saves that we have. That will give a good example to why these relics just don't have opportunity to be functioned. So we just avoid these. We also tend to avoid these relics that give you stats on kill, because when we're speedrunning, even in seasonal when we're speedrunning, we tend to avoid planets like 3x3s and 4x4s, because they just take a lot of time to clear, and especially 3x3s. 3x3s are really big, and for the most part, you can skip right to the end, but even then, that's a 20-second minimum run to the end, where most bosses only take 6 seconds to kill, so we tend to skip these, and for that part, we don't have enough time to actually be killing a lot of enemies to make use of these relics. But if you're playing G3 Extreme by yourself, not G3 Extreme, sorry, if you're playing solo seasonal by yourself and you're just going for your first win, picking these relics up are still perfectly fine in that scenario. But if you're trying to speedrun, please avoid these relics. Moving over to skills. So in solo, you really want to be running the defense shred option. Removing the enemy defense is crucial in the full length of your run. It's a little bit less damage early into your run, but in the later part of the run, it's very important. If you don't, say, get another one of these skill upgrades by the end of your run, it's not as impactful as if you didn't have defense shred by the end of the run. I hope that made some sort of sense. If not, roll with me here and I'll explain and show you the options that you want to go for. So in solo, defense shred. The other things you really want to be looking for from hack and slash throughout the run will be things like cooldown reduction. This double duration and hit count for hack and slash is actually a lot of damage. It makes the animation longer as well, and during the entire duration of this animation, you are immune to damage. You want any relic that says this, not relic, sorry, any skill upgrade that says this, 100% skill power for 15 seconds when using. Draken has a lot of these upgrades, and this is a lot of skill power to be gaining, and he could easily reach that skill power cap. This is what allows him to reach those really high crit hits that you see people doing. But for the most part, you just want this. You want the defense shred, you want the double hit count, and you want the skill power thing, as well as the cooldown thing. This health recovery stuff isn't important. Ideally, you just wouldn't be hit. I know a lot of people will be like, yeah, just don't get hit full head. But no, this can help maintain things like, okay, this can really help maintain things like your mercy, but I wouldn't prioritize taking these over the damage options. If you, say, get into a scenario where you only have the counterattack options and this, then this becomes a lot more attractive to take. Moving over to the next most important upgrades to be finding will be things like Sweeping Wind upgrade. So this upgrade is huge for your overall damage. If you're playing in a multiplayer setting and you have someone else defense shredding already, this is the skill you want to start with. It gives you 100% skill power and 100% crit damage for 15 seconds on use. Playing a breaker like Draken, who's a skill-based breaker who can run the Crasher shotgun, this is just almost mandatory. Even in solo, you have to find this as early as possible to really get your damage going as fast as possible. Other things you really want to be looking for is like this attack power upgrade. Again, attack power is a really important stat. Being able to get 60% of it for 10 seconds just by spamming your main filler spell is pretty huge. Cooldown reduction, not as important. The Sweeping Wind cooldown is pretty low, but again, I'd still much rather take this over a counterattack option. Bleed duration is really important. This means by the time you get to those final phases on bosses that you can bleed, you're not going to have just like a 1 second bleed. You're going to have a bleed that lasts hopefully for the entirety of that phase for you bursting it down. Then we're going to go over to like this upgrade. This you avoid. Just avoid. You don't care for the weapon power part. You don't need to be pulling enemies in. For the most part, they're either going to be hitting you in the face anyway, or you're going to be on top of them because you are playing a skill-based Crasher Breaker. Moving over to Blade Shock. This is your main bread and butter. This will be the skill that hits the hardest. This will be the main thing that's going to cause you to take a boss from nearly full health to just dead. The most important things to find here will be the skill power on use again, as well as things like skill power on use once again, and the 100% damage against bleeding targets for 10 seconds. This is huge. This is a global multiplier, so what that means is it will be calculated after the rest of your damage is already calculated. So when you hit an enemy, it'll take your attack power, it'll then multiply that by skill power, which will then get put in your crit damage and all these juicy numbers based stuff, and then that final number will be multiplied by these multipliers. So that means this will give you the biggest chunk for your money. But to really utilize this, you need to be watching the bleed debuff on a boss's health bar and making sure that you have that bleed on the boss when you want to be hitting Blade Shock. You do not want to proc the bleed and then Blade Shock. You want to apply it to 4 times, Blade Shock, and then hit him once again with a Sweeping Wind to detonate the 5th stack. This will be the chunky burst damage that you see. And then you want to cap it off with the whole extra explosion. This will give you pretty much a double hit from your Blade Shock, which will let you reset it with Special Charge Module more often, as well as just giving you more burst in that window. Now, these counterattack options, again, if you're playing solo, some of these can be really good. So if you're playing solo and you do end up picking up the Charging Grease type playstyle, this is your main one you want to be finding. But you don't really want any of these. I explained why counterattacking is bad, and all this is just counterattacking. So, yeah. But in terms of skill rotation, what you want to be doing is you'll come into a fight, you'll fire your Crasher, you'll get your crit buff, your Sweeping Wind to get a stack, your Hack and Slash to apply the defense shred, Sweeping Wind again and again to get your attack power put up. Now, once you've done that, the enemy will be at 3 stacks of bleed, you'll have your Crasher buff, it'll have defense shred activated, and then you want to hit with Blade Shock. If you're slow at this and you've a little bit out of practice and you're not quite sure on your timings, what you can do is shoot your Crasher once more before you Blade Shock to make sure you keep that crit buff, because the animation is pretty long. Moving over to Toy Workers.
Accessing Toy Worker System.
Here you only have 2 options. It's really unfortunate, but these Toy Workers, you've got like your Little Fly, your Power Dog, your Gunhound, and your Goldrich, as well as High V2. Just don't hold a candle to Goldhound and Medic. So, Goldhound will give you the most damage in your run. I know that might sound weird, but pretty much why this is because Goldhound will give you so many coins throughout the course of the run, which will let you re-roll the shops more often, buy relics you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, buy better crashes you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, and just give you more damage through that means, in comparison to just taking one of these little stat boosting toy workers. The other one that's a very good option is Medic V2. Medic V2 gives you the most raw damage. So if you take Medic, you will notice bigger numbers earlier into your run, but by the end of the run, Goldhound would have given you more. Medic will be more Medic will be better in a setting like G3 normal, where the coins of Goldhound don't have a chance to really stack up. But the early attack power that this gives you is really good to be able to just get through those earlier bosses a little bit faster. You will notice this in the videos where I do G3 Extreme Solo, that I tend to have Medic on just because it makes those little earlier planets a little bit faster. But when you're resetting runs and you're going for the best run possible and you're doing speed runs, then you want to be running Goldhound because it will give you more opportunities to see better options. If none of that made sense, to summarize it, Goldhound is the best. Medic V2 is the second best, but will give you better early game consistency. I hope this has been useful. To quickly go over seasonal upgrades, I have everything, so it's not really fair for me to say just get it all. But the things that you really want to prioritize getting to as fast as possible, so just put 5 straight down and go into resources, for the same reasons that Goldhound is really good, is the same reasons that resources is really good. And then things like a regeneration and gain shield will let you ignore more defensive relics and gain more damage relics because you won't have to buy them. So working towards resources, then work towards getting regen and gain shield. And then from there, it's pretty much a freedom of choice. I tend to, like, on my second account, when I was leveling through the second account in the earlier seasons, I still ignored this page until the very end because it just doesn't give you that much great DPS options in comparison to being able to ignore defense relics by getting these stuff. The health 1 and health 2 scale into Giant's Neck, so if you find Giant's Neck into your run and you have these maxed out, that's giving you a lot of attack power in comparison to having just a tiny bit more crit or a tiny bit more skill power, or the cooldown's really nice. The kill power's now really good now that they fixed the bug, so in seasonal, I might suggest getting this after you've got the gain shield as fast as possible. Penetration's really good, but not necessary for Draken, as he has defense shredding capabilities. I hope this has been helpful. Any questions, please comment below. I know I've been absent recently, but I've been really busy playing World of Warcraft. I'm a big nerd, I know. No, but I've basically been competing in the Great Push tournament. Our team has unfortunately lost in the regionals, so I've got a lot more free time now. But it's still a lot of fun, and I hope this has been educational at least. See ya.